okay, so what? Santa Fe, New Mexico is dry and elevated.
Very dry.
What would happen to me here in
Liquefied.
Florida?
I told you, there's only a couple options.
Out for the...
Hey everybody, and welcome back to another fun-filled episode of Mostly Harmless. I'm Matt.
And I'm Sarah.
And we're here to fill your lives with glee.
Yeah, I don't think so. Not in this episode.
Warm and fuzzies?
No, neither nuzzy.
No?
No. So today we're off the Love is Blind train. I have a new fear unlocked. It is dying in my home and nobody knowing and or giving a shit, as is the case with Gene Hackman. I'm sure that this is going to be an episode of The Curious Case season 2 because I was so obsessed with this because
You were all about it.
it really is, honestly, I think, probably, but I thought being buried alive was a worst fear. Falling from an elevator shaft, just like free falling, that's always been a fear of mine. But truly, this is horrific. Let's talk about it. The death. Oh, go ahead.
I will point out some of the things that you mentioned. You experience those things. So there is terror happening all throughout those things. Dying alone, you have already died. You no longer have the capacity to fear. You are out.
Well, let's talk about it because this is a really fucked up case. So at the end of February, two-time Academy Award winning actor Gene Hackman, who's worth $80 million,
It's a chunk of change.
you know, enough to have a fucking personal assistant or something.
That's
but
what
anyway,
he had a wife for.
All right, well, we'll get there. So two-time Academy Award-winning actor Gene Hackman is found dead. 95-year-old two-time Academy Award-winning actor Gene Hackman is found dead in his home along with his wife. She was in her 60s, and one of their dogs. Immediately, I mean, that's bizarre. When I hear this story, I think back to Phil Hartman. That was a horrible tragedy.
Was that a murder-suicide?
It was a murder-suicide. It's just, what would cause the death of two people plus an animal? Initially, his kids come out, and I guess, because here's the other thing, and this is going to play a huge part of this story, is Gene Hackman has 3 adult children. I mean, his oldest kid is 65. He has a boy and 2 girls. Initially, the family suspected carbon monoxide poisoning, because that would make sense.
Well, you would circumstantially being like, okay, 2 people dead and an animal, right? And you're like, okay, that makes sense. But then some of the facts start pouring in.
And the facts are bizarre as fuck. So they're found at the end of February, like February 26th or something. When I tell you the details that come out, it's like, I'm sorry, what did you say? The word mummified comes into play when we're talking about remains. And it's like, I'm sorry, what did you just say?
We don't throw that one around lightly.
No. So initially, you suspect, well, what would kill, like, what would wipe out an entire household, right? Well, carbon monoxide, that would be a horrible tragedy, but you could rationalize that as something that could wipe out an entire household at one time, right? At one time. So, okay, well, it looks like it wasn't carbon monoxide. That comes out. That's one of the first details that comes out.
It wasn't.
So then the sheriff's department or something had made a note that made it out into the public that it had appeared that Gene and his wife had died at different times.
Staggeringly. Well, we find out it's staggeringly different times.
Yeah. And
Not
it's
like 15 minutes later. No,
yeah.
no.
So that initially piqued my curiosity. Well, this whole thing piqued my curiosity. But then that specifically, and Gene Hackman's wife, she's in her 60s. So she's around the age of his oldest kid, which we will get into the family dynamics. We don't know a whole lot about his kids. His kids have really led a mostly private life. Gene Hackman retired from acting in the early 2000s. And by all intents and purposes, it looks like he and his wife had become incredibly reclusive by choice, presumably. I don't know. But his wife was this classical pianist. She was born in Hawaii, I think, or she's from Hawaii. And she went to, I think, USC, and they got married in the 80s. Some of the other weird details that come out about this is just crazy. They determined, because Gene Hackman had a pacemaker, that the last recorded event on his pacemaker was sometime like February 17th. He's discovered the 26th.
Right.
He laid dead for 9 days with 3 adult children. I'm sorry. There's a story there.
Yes. So there's all kinds of conspiracy theories around, but I don't know exactly where the facts on the situation lie. But one of the things I heard on Stern is that the order of events essentially is something to the ilk of the wife dies, presumably going to get some kind of, maybe I'm going to grab the medication, and dies in the process.
Yeah.
Gene is not within his proper faculties.
He was suffering from...
It was Alzheimer's, right?
He had Alzheimer's, advanced Alzheimer's.
And so with that, some people are like, oh, well, yeah, he just couldn't figure out how to get out of the house, and then blah, blah. Well, that's not the case, because the doors were open to the house, according to this when I was talking about the storm. Like, a door was open, which is why, the dog that died in a kennel. It was unable to get out of the kennel. The dogs that did not die were able to at least get water or food, or maybe they had an automatic feeder. But it's not that Gene was unable to leave the house.
The other reason why this story really hits home and breaks my heart is because my grandpa died of Alzheimer's. Your grandfather died of Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's touches so many families, and it's heartbreaking to see a loved one go in that manner. I just have so many questions about the state of his relationship with his kids. I did some cursory research on it, and it seems like he had given some interviews that he had made mistakes and he wasn't around all the time. So it does seem like there was an estrangement between him and his children. He gets married in the 80s to this. He gets divorced from his first wife, the wife he has these 3 kids with. And unfortunately, that woman died in like 2017. So these 3 kids are now orphans. I mean, they're, adults, but it sucks.
Yeah, it's always odd, because I've heard, grown people, I'm an orphan now.
Yeah.
It's like, I feel like that the term orphan kind of schleps off right around the 18-year mark.
I think
it does define their situation.
It still hits when, you realize that both of your parents are dead. That I luckily, thankfully, don't know what that is like. So Gene marries this woman. I don't know if that was like weird for his kids to have him marry someone that was their age or what. But in like 2005, he either redoes his will or does his will, And he leaves his entire fortune to his wife, specifically leaving his kids out. And then there's this clause, because we'll get to it. There's this clause in his wife's will that, like, should they die within 90 days of each other, then
leave it to the dog that was in the kennel?
the money would go to charity. Like, give it to causes you think we would approve of, type of thing. But this is where just gets crazy. So they're living in New Mexico. I don't know what the, like, landscape of New Mexico. I've never been there. I don't know if there's, like, a vermin rodent problem. But Jean's wife died of hantavirus, hantavirus, which is only can get that from rodent droppings.
It's like the bubonic plague.
And so it's like, okay, what was the state of the house that they were living in? That makes me really sad.
Well, on that note, I mean, you can come into contact with rodent droppings and you wouldn't even know it, depending on where you're at. Like, I would find it hard to believe that their house, I mean, I don't know. You see, because I want to say that they had maids, but if they had a maid, it's been 10 days, right?
I think that the people or person that found them were, like, outside workers,
right? Like the landscapers
that saw, like,
something.
could see them through, like, a window or something, and was like, "Holy shit!"
I don't necessarily would assume the house would have, like, a crazy amount of vermin in it, but I do think that you can come into contact with it. Like, imagine if you think about there could just be, like, rodent shit anywhere, but. It's hard. It's because, I mean, my first thought would be that the maid, you know what I mean? Like, there would be someone cleaning this house, but if there was someone cleaning the house,
I would think so. Let this be a warning, a wake up call, because, you know, I had posted in my Instagram stories, like, yo, like, his kids are kind of pieces of shit. Like, how are you not checking on, like, your 95-year-old Alzheimer's dad? Right? And I got a couple replies like, I don't know, maybe he was a piece of shit dad.
Yeah,
you know?
I wouldn't really jump down the kids' throats on that one.
Well, but here's the thing. If I had a 95-year-old neighbor, I'd be checking in on them. I'm sorry.
If you have a horrible relationship with a relative, it is absolutely not unheard of to not check on them.
If you had relationship enough to put out a statement after he died,
it's high profile. You're being asked for a statement by everyone. You're going to have to, just to shut the people up. But if you have a shitty relationship with a family member, it is very, very easily. Especially when you think about it, at the smallest increment of time, it was at most 10 days of no one checking in on him for a family member. And if you have a shitty relationship, that's fine. I've gone that long without reaching out to my mom probably before. I know I've gone that or longer without reaching out to my dad. Like, it is very possible to, especially in just that, not even 10, it was like 9 days from the time she died. From the time she died to the time they discovered him.
So people think that he just was meandering around the house, didn't know what was up for 9 days.
Well, he wasn't puttering for 9 days.
Oh, no. I'm sorry. He laid dead for 9 days before he was discovered. So I think it was like 6 or 7 days between the time she died and by the time he died. Because I was going to say I took some notes, but I really just
printed out notes.
I printed out some notes.
Someone else's notes.
Yeah, I printed out someone else's notes.
She went to Sparkle Notes, or what was it?
Spark Notes. Oh, what a throwback. So his wife's name, I believe, was Betsy Arakawa, and her last known outing was on February 11th. She visited a pharmacy, pet store, and the grocery store before returning to the couple's gated neighborhood that evening.
So she was at large February 11th.
She was spotted out and about on February. Yeah. So apparently, according to this article, she stopped answering emails that day. It says the couple's cell phone communication had not yet been analyzed. It says Hackman's pacemaker last showed signs of activity a week later, indicating an abnormal heart rhythm February 18th, the day he likely died. So I think they said his cause of death was heart failure, but Alzheimer's played into that. And I was reading an article that, the dog was in a kennel and that it likely starved.
Because the other ones were, they're still, at least as far as we know.
I mean, it's just a tragic case all the way around. It says Hackman was found in the home's entryway. Arakawa was found in the bathroom. Their bodies were decomposing with some mummification, a consequence of body type and climate in Santa Fe's especially dry air at an elevation of nearly 7,200 feet.
Yeah, because that would indicate that you're not rotting or liquefying. The dryness of that air, you're basically in a, you know how they make jerky, they just dry it out, that's what so you have a couple options upon decomposition. There's liquefying, and then there's mummifying.
Yeah. So it says experts believe Hackman was severely impaired due to Alzheimer's and unable to deal with his wife's death in the last week of his life or seek help after she died. It says hantavirus typically is reported in spring and summer, often due to exposures that occur when people are near mouse droppings in homes, sheds, or poorly ventilated areas. This is the first confirmed case of hantavirus in New Mexico this year.
Yeah, maybe I don't know. Let's postulate for a minute. Maybe she liked gardening or something like that, and she in a shed.
Sure.
That makes a little bit more I want to believe they lived in a relatively clean environment, especially with having that kind of money. Yeah. And she was not suffering from Alzheimer's or anything like that.
No.
So she was within her faculties. She wouldn't want to live in having access to that money. It would be a clean place.
It says the virus can cause a severe and sometimes deadly lung infection. It was not known how quickly Arakawa died. And then one of the couple's 3 dogs, a Kelpie mix named Xena, was also found dead in a crate in a bathroom closet near Arakawa. What?
The dog's name, how's it spelled?
Zinna.
Oh. I was thinking it was Xena, Warrior Princess.
Oh, no, I would have,
That's I would have. Right? No?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I just had to get my Xena Warrior Princess reference in there.
So this was an article from just today. So more information keeps coming out. Everyone's really obsessed.
Today being
Monday, March 17th.
Just for the people who might not have
the day after Matt's birthday, his 38th year around the sun.
Getting it.
Happy birthday.
I try.
To you. Don't copyright claim this.
You can, too. I remember 30 Rock, just to bring it up a little bit here.
Yeah.
30 Rock used to make fun of the fact that somebody owns the rights to the Happy Birthday song. And whether this is true or not, they did make excellent jokes out of it. You can't sing more than 10 seconds of it on a platform without having to pay royalties. So they would, anytime they do the birthday, they'd do 10 seconds of the Happy Birthday song and go, that's enough. We don't want to pay royalties.
No. So what essentially the case is just a complete tragedy. And I guess it's a fucked up story. It's tragic. Not because he's a 2-time Academy Award winning actor, or he's so famous, or he's so rich. Because honestly, this could happen to anyone. And I think that that's why it kind of rocks me to my core.
It's a very relatable situation.
Nurture those relationships with people, check in on people, because you never know when you're gonna, what is it, punch your ticket or whatever.
Yeah, you're gonna punch
and
that clock.
God forbid I lay down. I mean, okay, so what? Santa Fe, New Mexico is dry and elevated.
Very dry.
What would happen to me here in
Liquefied.
Florida?
I told you, there's only a couple options. You'd be liquid.
If I laid it, I would be maggot food, right?
Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Gross.
I wouldn't want to deal with that. That would be yucky. Please don't.
I'm gonna do my best, but and this is why, and we'll talk about it in a second, but this is why I'm kind of like with his kids. Obviously, I don't know. This guy could have been a total piece of shit dad. But barring anything like real gnarly, if he was an absentee dad and you just didn't really have that close of a relationship with him, all right. But he's 95. Yeah. No, he has Alzheimer's. Again, you're not doing like a weekly check-in on the guy.
That is, being an absentee, shitty dad is plenty of reason not to have people check in on you. I'm sorry. Yeah, I think people will agree with me on that.
I don't know.
Like,
what I don't know.
You don't require a lot from your parents besides love and someone being there for you. Yeah. And if one of the mainstays of being a parent is just being around and an attaboy every once in a while, and that is fundamental to growth. So if these kids feel wronged by that, I completely
I guess you got to be a real piece of shit. He had to have been a real piece of shit, rest in peace, not to speak ill of the dead, but in order to be 95, you wrote your kids out of your will 20 years ago. That's a piece of shit move.
Well, and this is also an interesting example of, when the LA fires were happening and all these rich people their houses burned down and all the social media were like, oh, they can just buy a new house. Oh, well, look how relatable it is for a dude with millions and millions of dollars. He doesn't have a team of caretakers at the house. Yeah, that surprised me. He didn't have nurses, and it took that long for somebody to come out there, just living life like a well-off, normal person. And it's just like, as much as people love to hate on celebrities, it's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Like, oh, they're rich. They can just buy a new one. Well, that sucks. I guess they can just buy new memories and all that kind of stuff. It's just a shitty attitude to have. And this is a perfect example of he was a very rich person and he was living like any one of us could at that age.
Yeah. And I'm sure his preference clearly was to not have a team. And I guess that's the risk you take.
It is. Yep.
When you're 95, there wasn't, but here, okay, so this actually is pertinent to this article. It says new details about the deaths of actor Gene Hackman and his wife Betsy could impact how his estate is handled, according to officials. Authorities have offered a new timeline about when Betsy Arakawa died, which could play a role in where Hackman's fortune goes. Officials now say Betsy called a medical service the morning after she was previously thought to have died. The Santa Fe sheriff says early February 12th, she called Cloudberry, a medical concierge service with credentialed doctors. That would indicate to me that she was seeking medical advice or medical help and may have not been feeling well.
Certainly indicates to me that she was alive. She made a phone call after she died, and that indicates
Sherlock,
one thing for
I think you are onto something here. A Cloudberry doctor described that call as an inquiry about an esoteric treatment, saying there were no signs of breathing issues or distress. When the office called back twice, they said they had never heard back. Okay, so now I got bigger beef now with this Cloudberry service than I do with Gene Hackman's kids. Someone calls you for medical assistance, you call them back, they don't answer. You don't call for a wellness check on them?
I have accidentally dialed back on physical phones. So you kids might not remember what a home phone looks like, but they had buttons on them. You didn't hold it in your hand. 911 more times than I can count. And
Okay.
when you hang up the phone, even if you just do 911 and it rings, like, oh shit, and you hang up the phone,
Yeah.
they fucking call you back, because 911, at least for me, and it happened multiple times, 911 is like, well, if they dialed 911, it's assumed they're having an emergency. If they disconnect, either that emergency was so bad someone found them and ripped them away from the phone, something like that, or the house is on fire and we need to check. Then if the line's disconnected, one time we hung up, we then didn't answer. They actually sent a local officer to our house, and we had to explain that I had accidentally dialed 911. I was very young.
According to Google, esoteric treatment generally refers to healing approaches rooted in esoteric traditions, often involving spiritual or metaphysical concepts which are distinct from conventional medicine.
Oh, so it's like Eastern medicine.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Oh, so Cloudberry's covering their asses with their statement, because just rereading this, it says, a Cloudberry doctor described that call as an inquiry about esoteric treatment, saying there were no signs of breathing issues or distress.
But why did they call back then?
Yeah, they called back twice. They said they never heard back, and that did not
That didn't
sound the
elicit
alarm for them.
And see, look, they go out of their way to cover their ass to say that there was nothing to worry about. And except for the fact that if you really read into that statement, they received a phone call about medical advice. God knows what the actual phone call, for anyone will ever hear it or whatever. And then they felt the need to call back, not once, but twice, and did not alert local people to come down and check it out.
Yeah.
And why did you call twice? Why did you call once? They didn't answer. You called again. They didn't answer. And you didn't, what's your policy on that? You're a medical place. Yeah, okay, maybe if you're the Pit ER, you don't have time to chase down every little lead, even though they do a pretty good job in that show.
They do.
But we're talking about, someone reached out for medical advice and then you couldn't get a hold of them again. And it sounded like what you said the phone call amounted to was, we covered everything and we're good. So why did you call them back? If you covered everything and there was no emergency, why did you, the service, call them back not once but twice? There's mishandling being happened there, I feel.
Yeah, and did the call disconnect thank you, you've helped me, goodbye?
Right.
Or did the call end abruptly?
Or did she ask for
and
a
come to
return
no
call?
conclusion? Or were you calling to check back in on how are you feeling type of things? And there was no reply. I have more questions.
We have in our lives had to deal with medical facilities who are really good at covering their own asses over helping patients.
Mm-hmm.
And it is very interesting when it's when you're being hey, I need to find out X, Y, and Z, and this doesn't seem right. The first thing they'll tell you is, no, we covered ourselves. I don't have an answer for you on any of the other stuff, but we are legally not responsible anymore. And that's the first thing these people do is, we're fine, we're good, we didn't do anything wrong.
Yeah.
And it just bothers me. Again, it's not about helping people. It's about, limiting liability, and the fact that most of these kind of places like that, most of these health places it's I wish that they just wanted to help and that's what they want to do. But the first thing is well, no, we got to make sure that we're liability free in this situation, which I understand that, but you don't see any reason that you may be liable for your inaction in this situation. Well,
I don't think that they would be liable for anything. I mean, if she called and she was kind of what kind of natural homeopathic remedies could I do for my cough or whatever, because it seems like this hantavirus is
it's uncommon, for sure.
But it seems like it's a lung and it's pulmonary.
Yeah.
So if she was maybe she didn't know it was hantavirus. Maybe she thought she just had a cold or something. It does say here that she was when she was seen out on February 11th, she was wearing a mask. So she probably was symptomatic and probably called to see what can I do. And maybe it doesn't mean to say she didn't believe in like modern medicine or Western medicine or what have you. But
maybe it was, I can't get in to see a doctor to get an
or
antibiotic.
maybe she just prefers, like, you know, there's tons of people out there that don't like to take Tylenol or whatever. They'll use like peppermint oil or whatever.
I don't take Advil unless I have to.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily mean she was all into like woo-woo treatments or whatever, but it is interesting to me. And is Cloudberry a service that's known for offering like alternative treatment options? Because why would she call them?
I
if
suppose
that was,
we don't know anything about this.
I have questions.
I don't know.
This is where it gets interesting, and this is where it gets legal. So put on your...
Ladies and gentlemen, if you can check the counter in the top corner, we're going to count how many times Sarah starts a sentence with "this is where it gets interesting" in this one, because it just gets more and more interesting.
Well, that's better than having a like counter.
That's true.
Because I've gotten that comment.
I was just being
sorry
silly.
About my voice.
Like, right?
Yeah. Don't tempt me with
I was just
good
being
time.
silly.
That's okay.
But how does it get knocked into 12th gear?
Well, this is where it gets legal. This is where we're going to probate.
Who's going to court? About what?
Potentially Gene Hackman's kids. Now we're gonna
about the will.
Now we're gonna see. And honestly, if you had a piece of shit dad who was and you know what? I don't want to potentially speak ill of the dead. We have no idea why they were estranged. They were estranged. Maybe the kids were pieces of shit. Maybe Gene was a piece of shit. They didn't have a relationship. That much is clear.
I find it odd that people choose when people die to stop talking shit about them, you know? Because, like, you could talk shit about someone to their face, but when they die, all of a sudden they're a saint. No. Now you're just unable to defend yourself. You were still a piece of shit.
I mean, I do suppose Gene Hackman's memory could care less what I think of him. I honestly never thought much about Gene. I like Poseidon Adventure, but, you know, other than that, I think he's in, like, Royal Tenenbaums.
He was in Kicking and Screaming. Was that him? With Will Ferrell? I don't know. I know he's been in
No, that's Robert Duvall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think.
No, it was not. I'm going to find out.
Yeah.
Right now.
Pause on that. Mind you, I said this is where it gets interesting, and I haven't actually gotten into my story at all.
You know, I was just being silly.
Yeah, no. I'm just saying, I've been like, what do they call it when you're like buying time on stage?
Not fluffing. That's different. Fumfering.
Fumfering?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
Kicking and Screaming. Coach Gene Hackman is known for his role as the character Coach in the movie Kicking and Screaming.
I stand corrected.
You sit corrected.
I sit corrected. My apologies, Gene Hackman.
He don't care.
That's been an established fact of this podcast. So the timeline could play an important factor. And like I was saying, this is where we're going to see what the kids are going to do. Because are they going to try to go after their dad's estate? He leaves his entire estate to his wife, but his wife dies too. So now what's a kid to do? And honestly,
I wonder what legal leg they have to stand on with I know we're going to get there, but like my just general questioning of, I made a legal document in sound mind and able body or whatever it is you have to put in there with many, many lawyers, and he revised it in enough time where he was still there, and then she also had a will of the same ilk. And I just don't know where you can be like, hey, I don't want my dad's money going where he said it should go. Like, all right, but that's great. But your dad decided what he wanted to do with his money, and you don't have recourse. Like, just because they're family, you don't have a right to their shit. Like,
especially
if you were literally removed from the will.
But here's the thing. I don't think that Gene said fuck them kids in his will. He just named his wife as the sole beneficiary. So it says Gene left his $80 million estate to his wife and did not name his children. However, Betsy left her estate to charity. And this ABC's News legal contributor comments, if Betsy passes away first and then Gene, his will, in a sense, would become void because the individual he wanted his items to be passed to no longer exists in the eyes of the law.
That's fair. That is fair.
Yeah, his estate and everything he left in his will would go to probate court, where individuals can argue that they should receive the benefits of Gene Hackman's will.
That's fair, though. That makes sense, except for you would have to be able... I feel you would have to be able to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that she did die before him, and I don't know if you're able to prove it beyond a shadow of a doubt.
I think it was it was clear before they did autopsies when they were just commenting, the sheriff, I remember him saying that it seemed like she had died. I think the comment was like sometime before. Mm-hmm. So I think it was pretty clear that she had died first.
That to me sounds like a perfectly reason. Like, it doesn't even sound like cutthroat, like gimme. It like, because when you say now we're going to go to court and they're going to try to get theirs. No, now it just feels like, okay, well, now that the wills are null and void. Yeah. Like, I wasn't expecting anything, but now we might as well go to probate and be like, hey, let's split it between the three of us, I suppose. And
honestly, when you look at the situation, there is no scenario where the kids are not going to look like greedy motherfuckers coming forward to like lay claim to their father's estate. Let's be real.
No, and
your dad laid dead in his home for 9 days, and now you're going to split $80 million 3 ways. Well, but I'm not saying, and people, because I've had people comment like, you don't know the nature of their relationship. And that is absolutely true. And that's absolutely fair. Also, the person it's not like they're coming in and trying to contest the will or anything like that.
Well, see, that's where I thought originally, before we had discussed the different extenuating circumstances for the wills. That's what I thought.
Yeah,
and then in
like
that case, I say you're being kind of an asshole.
Yeah, no, the person that he left his estate to also died. So it's 80 mil up for grabs.
Yeah, I'd want to bite that apple.
Yeah, if your piece of shit mother or father abandoned you for all intents and purposes, that's kind of the vibe I'm feeling like, because based off of comments Gene Hackman made in the past, it seems like he wasn't really around that much for his kids. And probably it seemed like at least the son kind of was like, I'm not going to have a relationship with you. The 2 daughters from articles I read seem to have had more of a relationship with him. So I wouldn't blame the kids for saying like, okay, well, if nobody wants it, I'll take it,
Well, see, so that's now where I'm de-vilifying them in my head, because if you follow the train that we were all just riding up until this point, right up until we discussed how the will is null and void.
I guess that's just how wills work.
It's up to, you cannot leave money. You can leave money to, you cannot leave money to an inanimate object or a dead thing. You can leave it to a fucking cat. That's legal. And it happened, but it is what it is. But at first I'm like, okay, well, that's kind of shitty. Like, let's say we ignore the disillusions of the wills or whatever. Let's be like, oh, she wants the money for charity. Now that you're saying I want the money, but she wants it all donated to charity when she dies, now you're being an asshole. But now that that's not the case, I'm like, okay, go get your money.
Well, okay, but say she didn't name a specific charity. Apparently from, and I didn't print the article that I read it in, but I had read somewhere that her will, the language was should anything happen to me, if we, and it was specific too. It was like, we have to die within like 90 days of each other, which is like kind of, it must be legal.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there was like
but it's just kind of weird. Yeah. But anyways, it's like, if that scenario happens, then the money goes to charity. And it's like, pick charities that made sense with who we were as people or something like that.
Let me tell you right now, that would be the most annoying fucking thing I could ever read in a will. If okay, so I'm cleaning up all the mess and I'm moving all the stuff out of a house, and then we get to that part where we go to the lawyer's office and they say, okay, so he left $80 million to be donated to a charity that you feel would befit his stature and person. I'd be like, are you fucking kidding me? Could you just name the charity?
Well, yeah,
You're
so
making me do work.
It wasn't like, this goes to the ASPCA or something. Yeah. It's
trying to pull a non-controversial charity out of your ass is a little hard in 2025.
It is.
It really is. But when you go and you're like, I think it's something along the lines of, every dollar you donate to, and I'm just going to pull the name Goodwill out of my ass, it's just a placeholder. Every dollar you donate, only like a fraction of a penny actually gets there. Yeah. The CEO's salary is in the millions. The employee, it's ridiculous. But it's sad. Trying to find a non-controversial charity. It's funny, you think people would start a charity for altruistic purposes, but it turns out that a lot of people do it because it's a tax-free money house for some people.
So it will be interesting to see in court, because then at this point, it's not like you're not taking money out of anyone's exactly. You're not taking money out of anyone's hand.
And the money is not earmarked for a specific show. It's not like, okay, well, it was going to go to PETA,
Boys and Girls Club of America,
and now and they were maybe expecting it. They didn't know it, but it was money that was going to go there.
Yeah.
Well, there's no there.
Yeah.
So you're not taking it out of anybody's pocket. You're taking it out of a hypotheticals.
Yeah.
Like,
it will be interesting, to see his son or his daughters come forward. Why
I don't think we will, because I don't think this is not gonna be the Karen Reed trial of probate courts.
Oh my God. We got hearings tomorrow.
No, but it's not like as quickly, so what is it? The universe, and this is how it'll all end, not with a bang, but with a whimper. Like, the biggest part of it's already dead and gone. Like, there's no more, like, this is not, we're not pulling things out. A new development. Like, they died of less than nefarious circumstances.
Yeah.
They died in unfortunate. No, they said, you know what it was? And this is so funny because Stern says, if you're going to die, this is what you want it to be labeled as, because they're death by misadventure or something like that.
Truly.
What are the qualifications to die of misadventure?
I can't believe they didn't have any kind of hospice care coming to,
she was spry enough to be a caregiver, and he probably went to regular doctor's appointments. But again, if you have to take this bisection of this at most 2-week bisection of their lives. This, if you think about it, imagine they had a doctor appointment the day after and the day before, and this was just the quiet week in between.
The stars really aligned in the worst way possible.
But that happens. That's life. Like, and so, you could look at it in a way being like, oh, he doesn't, they don't go to doctors. Maybe she was keeping him because he never goes out. And I'm like, no, maybe it just happened to be a week that they didn't have anything going on. Like, the kids, notwithstanding for their attitudes and all that stuff, I'm like, just general, like, how many weeks do we not have shit going on? Like, where it's like, we got 2 young kids and there's still some weeks that it's just A to B without any ping pongs in between.
I know. I guess I
happen to be
I don't come from a family where we let that much time pass without just communicating.
Well, you're lucky.
You were
very lucky.
Yes. I see that now. I
You
see
know?
that. Yeah. And it really does, because, your knee-jerk reaction, my knee-jerk reaction, and I do struggle with not seeing it this way, because at the end of the day, a 95-year-old man suffering from Alzheimer's laid dead on the floor for 9 days before anyone discovered him. Like, that is the facts of the case.
Mm-hmm.
So I struggle with in what circumstance would it make sense that his kids just didn't give a shit about
You
him?
have to construct your ivory tower. You have to build it and live in it and keep people out of it.
Yeah.
So if you are not reaching out and trying to mend fences and repair relationships because you expect Cody Brown, the kids, to apologize to you,
Yeah.
it doesn't work that way. You as a parent have a responsibility, if you want to have the kids in your life, to be there, whether your kids are pissed off at you or you don't agree with their choices or blah, blah, blah. You have a responsibility to be there for your kids. You don't have to do it, but if you don't want your kids checking in on you, then I don't know. Don't be around for them. It's pretty simple. All you have to do is be relatively present.
And I guess
if that's not the case, guess what? Like, they're not crying over spilled milk over there, the kids, If they had a great relationship, it'd be a different story. They didn't have a great relationship. And bad relationships, you can't fix it if both parties are not trying.
And I guess let this be a cautionary tale. Like, as you can only control yourself. Nurture your relationships with your friends and family so that people do come around to check on you.
The Sims taught me a very valuable lesson.
And what's that?
A long time ago. If you recall, The Sims, very popular video game across all manner of people, not just gamers. Everybody loved The Sims. And if you did not make your calls and hang out with friends when you hit a certain friendship level, the phone would ring at the house and it'd answer the phone, and the person who's no longer your friend anymore says, friendships are like plants. If you don't water them, they'll never grow. And then they hang up the phone because you did not water your plant friend. Yeah. And it works the same way with relationships. If you do not put in an effort, do not be surprised when people do not put in an effort for you.
Yeah.
Why would I want to push that Sisyphusian rock up the hill just because I know it's going to roll back down every fucking time? Mm-hmm. Why would you bother? Yeah. At a certain point, hey, you're going to do it for a while. And then eventually you're going to be like, you know what? I don't know why I'm trying to get up there. I'm fine down here. Yeah. So I don't know. It's a lesson. If you want people to give a shit about you, maybe put in a modicum of effort, just a fraction. You'd be surprised how little effort is required to be a present in someone's life. It's not a lot. You could go bluey above and beyond, but you can also just be there. It's half the battle, just being around.
Well, that's all we got regarding Gene Hackman.
Rest in peace, Mr. Hackman. You provided us with a handful of fond memories for me, only because I do not know your full body of work, but I know you were a very famous actor. Yeah.
And it's sad. It's a sad situation all around.
It is. But, it is also it is just another day in 2025.
That's the truth.
Sad as it is, there are awful things happening every day, malicey things and otherwise, but at least this was just unfortunate circumstances. There was no Harry Carey, there was no nefarious things behind it.
Yeah, there was no murder or anything, so that's nice.
Well, it's also why you're probably not going to get much more information about this unless you're really digging for it. You're not going to see a whole lot more about it because, again, a couple people passed away and it sucks. It's in what could be maybe painted as a slightly avoidable situation.
Yes.
But, again.
You say the word mummified when you're talking about two people dying in 2025 and you're like, okay, you have my attention.
True.
Yeah.
Last we'll say about it, people, is when you build your walls really, really high, sometimes people stop trying to climb over them.
Yeah.
And that is what we have for you guys today. That's the end of today's show. Follow us on all of the social medias at Do Mostly No Harm. Head on over to www.level42studios.com to check out the latest of all the shows that we do here. We got Sarah's Spills, Reality Squad, Mostly Harmless. There's a couple fun scripts on there, all kinds of fun crap. But you can also head over to the contact page where you can reach out to us specifically to ask any questions, comments, concerns, perhaps a show you'd like us to talk about, or really just anything. Maybe our opinion on something. Who knows?
Yeah.
And aside from that, we got to go.
Yeah.
Kids sleeping. Animals got to be put out.
Yeah.
So we got to go. As always, babe.
Do mostly.
No harm.
All right, you guys take care. Have a good one.